Okay, so welcome to our second briefing meeting. This week I think it's been on all our minds about the latest security industry revelations. I'm sure you all read the email. So David's going to give us a bit more information on what that means for us and also answer any questions that we might have. David.
Alright. Yeah, well, I think initially for us it was interesting looking at Prism and whatnot, and a lot of snooping on networks and servers and server-based companies, which we know doesn't really affect us, and we're immune to most of that kind of stuff, man-in-the-middle attacks and various things. Recently though, the stuff that's coming out is something that we have to now be aware of, because potentially there's attacks on hardware, in particular hardware from the likes of Intel and whatnot, that may have disabled random number generators being given as much entropy as they possibly should. Entropy is a really important aspect of cryptography, and therefore it's an important aspect of cryptographic implementation. So in terms of the crypto that we use, AES and RSA and various other algorithms, the algorithms themselves, I think, seem to be relatively strong, but there's a significant letdown being felt by the whole community that's involved in research and cryptography, and these people have been very focused on making these algorithms as good as they possibly can be. Whole careers have been extended to really look at the maths behind that. And I think that to look at a hack on any system, you wouldn't attack the strongest part, attack the weakest part. The weakest part in today's network, without a doubt, is the servers, and the companies just go to a company and say, give me your data. You know, you've got the login details of all your customers, just give it to us. We know that happened through Prism, as I said, it wasn't bothering us. The revelations now that potentially there's code inside Windows operating systems, Apple operating systems, and even further at the hardware level, chips being affected, random number generators being affected, it makes it very hard to understand what's the playing field that we're on here. You know, and that's, I think, for us that's a very difficult issue that we have to try and get to the bottom of. So what we've done recently is, or I know a few of us have been trying some stuff, is Intel actually have a special instruction set, AMD and other companies use it as well, for executing RSA code. So if you take our code and run it through the special instruction set in these processors, it speeds up by about 10 times. It's from about 200 meg per second to 2000 megs per second, megabytes per second. So we've been looking at algorithms and decided that more than likely we're disabling the special instruction set, so we won't actually ask the Intel processor for anything in it that's advanced. As far as the random number generators are concerned, that's an issue that's probably, I think you could say just now, that issue is threatening. It's not certain that these random number generators have been compromised, but there's a significant amount of doubt that we probably, from purely a cryptography perspective, should assume that they are. So that means for us, we have to then try and look at ways that we need entropy to get into our system to be able to seed the algorithms that we use. So we usually depend on a random number generator for that. If we assume that the operating system is clean, and that's very difficult to do with proprietary code, because Apple or Microsoft don't give you access to the low-level drivers that we really need access to confirm that this stuff's okay. But even if the operating system's clean and the hardware's not, then we're going to now have to spend a little bit more time ensuring that we're seeding entropy, or at least widening what we get properly. Intel were doing stuff like that. They were whitening their entropy. So basically AES encrypting it with an unknown key. But it's the same key all the time, which is really quite poor. So from a technical perspective and from a workload perspective, we've got a little bit of work to do to make sure that we fully understand the implications of what's going on and try and rationalise with as much fact and lack of bias as we possibly can, and without listening to some of the super scary stories that just look and say, well, what is actually possible? If these guys for the last 10 years have been infiltrating hardware and software, it's entirely likely that something's been done. So we probably should assume worst case scenario in terms of the hardware. In terms of the operating systems, it's very difficult because regardless of what we do on top of a Windows or Apple, and probably shouldn't keep saying that, but on top of an operating system which is likely compromised, it makes it inordinately difficult, because regardless of the algorithm, if these people are grabbing keystrokes, then we're in trouble. There's a lot of conjecture about that. I think at the moment it would be extremely difficult to do end computer penetration on a mass scale to try and get after these passwords. I don't think it's beyond any reasonable doubt that targeted attacks are probably achievable. These targeted attacks seem to actually take place, and mostly against companies, believe it or not. Companies and countries. I don't see why that is the case, but it seems to be the case. So I think there's quite a lot for us to think about, there's a lot for us to really consider. And previously we would be assume that the hardware is okay, assume the operating system is okay, and our implementation of the algorithm is what we have to focus on. Now we have to go further than our implementation of the algorithms and actually look at other ways around these problems. So we have to now start assuming the operating system is not okay, the hardware is not okay, and start filling things in around about that. The whole industry is like that, and there's, from a company perspective, I think from a political type perspective in terms of running the business, we need to be very aware that there could be a backlash against American companies because of this, or UK companies because of this, because the UK is apparently complicit, and maybe more than complicit, in some of these operations that have severely weakened the cryptographic ability. So there's a lot to think about, and I don't know how all you guys feel about it, but I think we have to start raising the bar a little and looking to see exactly what can we do, what should we do, and how should we go about testing for some of this stuff. So it's not a panic situation by any means. It's an eye opener for sure, and I think we need to engage with the community, which we have done already. It's been quite a lot of feedback, and really move forward and making sure that we can secure certain parts. We could produce live stuff just now, for instance, the MaidSafe network just now, which we could still guarantee the effectiveness of it, but maybe not in as many operating systems or as many places as previously we could have. So there's things to think about for sure, and we have to, I think we just have to now go into some sort of brainstorming thing, be analysing all the opportunities, the possibilities that are in front of us, because I think there may be more opportunities than there are things to be concerned about, but we just have to get them in the right order and not be complacent at all in terms of the implementation that we previously would assume would be okay, but we now have to do some more testing. So that's what I think. I don't know if you guys been following it or have you?
One thing was Phil Zimmerman from Silent Circle was saying that he was almost kind of seemingly guaranteeing, although he's got all their own infrastructure, all their own cabling and stuff like that in Canada, he still seemed to be guaranteeing that he was 100% secure.
Yeah.
Could he be that secure, or is that just PR?
I think it depends. I don't know enough about his operating systems to say for sure, but if the operating system's compromised, then no, we can't be secure. I think the Silent Circle thing's quite interesting because they've got a system which still relies on servers. So there's, if you look in their site, for instance, there's 5 or 6 things that they say they have information on, and and I think they do this in a really open and clean way. They say we've got your login name, we've got a hash representation of password that goes through various, it uses similar stuff to we do for passwords, although we don't ever transmit passwords, but they do a password-based key derivation for everything. So there's 4 or 5 things that they have that they must have because they're server-based, that they state on the site, but they've never been asked for. Apparently they're not allowed to say they've been asked for it for sure. So from being completely secure, I would probably say that Phil Zimmerman and his crew are probably some of the best in the world at securing networks and whatnot, but they still have a server base. And having that server base means that they still do have access to your username and access to a representation of your password, so that's completely not secure. You know, it's much better than many other systems today, but it's definitely not secure. You have to not have that information. If you don't have the information, it can never be stolen from you, and that's the only way to be secure. So the only way to know that somebody can't ever steal that pen is if I don't actually have that pen, and that's the way that we work. But he'll have certainly checked things like the random number generator, the algorithms that they're using are as solid as they should be, and as I say, it depends very much on the operating system he's using. Anybody else? Any comments on that?
I think what we've got to do is ask yourself the question, what are we securing people against? You know, 2 months ago we were securing people against attacks from other people.
Yeah.
And I think we have to make a decision whether we're going to secure people against attacks from governments now.
Yeah.
And whether we can.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I think that we have to secure people against every known threat, and anything that would intercept and read your data or read your communications, we should see as a threat from wherever it comes from. And we should definitely code and design our systems around those threats. I think the reality of the situation is we've become aware of threats that we never thought would be possible in this world or this lifetime. They definitely are possible. If nothing else, I think this whole Snowden thing and what's happened round about it has probably given everybody a wake-up call that we needed to say, do you really trust that piece of hardware? Do you really trust this thing? And the outcome, I think short-term outcome, will be that if a project is in the security arena, or people are offering encryption, or they're offering some kind of level of confidence to users, they're going to really have no choice but to offer their own source code. So people are going to have to be open source. Because the trust, I think, in governments and large companies is eroding extremely quickly. So it's good that we are open source, and it's terrific that we were open source before all of this stuff happened, that we haven't done it as a response. But I can't see many researchers now being too comfortable with proprietary solutions. and that's probably a very good thing. The difficulty with it is moving from a proprietary solution, which is almost a secret. There's probably really bad code in there, there's probably really insecure things in there. So from a technical perspective, it's probably quite hard to become open source properly. But from a political perspective, I think these companies have got a business model that maybe relies on a particular way of working. And to change to an open source model means that they're going to have to rethink the business. Which I'm not too sure is a bad thing, because a lot of the proprietary model is, I'm going to keep something and not give it to you unless you pay for it, or I'm going to give you something and I'm going to disable parts of it. So a lot of that kind of thing is based on a very false economy. So new business models have to arrive along with the open sourcing.
Does this change who you've got to as a company at the business level? Would be look at reviewing potential partners in terms of?
I think we really have to seriously consider it, because one of the things that's been apparent is these agencies have infiltrated an awful lot of companies, and that there in itself is quite a dangerous situation. But there's a bit I never mentioned earlier that I think is probably one of the most difficult parts of this whole situation. Many security algorithms are tested against the thing called NIST, that's the national something or other American thing, for standardization of algorithms. And you get vectors, test vectors, so basically you run an algorithm against these test vectors, and if you get the correct answer, it's likely been implemented properly. Now, everyone always thought properly meant completely securely, and now we're not sure. Properly could be that's weak enough that we can still get into it. The NIST thing has definitely been infiltrated by people in large government agencies for the completely wrong reason, to ensure there's weakness in algorithms, to ensure there's weakness in encryption, while at the same time promoting strength of encryption and strength of algorithms for the community, and not only for the community in the US, the UK, but worldwide. So an agency that would do that level of deceit, I think, would mean that working with us, we're going to have to be aware of that kind of thing and not really accept it, because our vision about privacy, security and freedom for all the people of the world has to be what we work towards, and there's no deceit in there. Our vision doesn't include a deceit component, so we definitely have to be careful who we're working with and for what reason we're working with various people. It still doesn't stop, I think, the way that our business model is very clear, that we don't really care who takes the code and uses it in an open source way. That's perfectly good. And someone can take our code and use it for any commercial purpose that they choose, and that's completely open. The difference would be, I think, if people worked with us in partnership to create more products that we put out as encompassing the whole privacy, security, freedom thing. That if people are working with us like that, it's going to have to be open. It has to be open source. We can't. I don't think we can get involved in creating proprietary products to the side especially for security reasons, but I think it would be very difficult for us at this moment in time to take on a partner to create some proprietary component that maybe doesn't do what it's supposed to. So yeah, that's a good point.
It might be worthwhile working with companies to get them out of trouble around with Patriot Act type scenarios.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, the encryption capability that we've got, the convergent encryption, self-encryption, real-time deduplication, all these things still stand as incredibly secure, strong products. These are all still fantastic additions to any company. You can imagine something like Google Drive, who today or last week are putting out encryption to secure their drive. The convergent encryption we have, the self-encryption capability, would do that for them very clearly and very cleanly, and that's available to them today. So any cloud provider, Dropbox or Bitcasa, any of these guys, we can actually help them, and I would help them with all these revelations that's come out. That's it.
Somebody else got anything to add?
No, that's 3 minutes before time as well.
That's good. Okay, that's us then. Thanks.
Alright, brilliant. Thanks a lot.